They shared it. Okay. Do a final check to make sure that you all can hear each other.
I really love Bob. She's great.
Rochelle, we'll just need to make sure that everybody really speaks into the microphone because it cuts in and out whenever people are talking.
It is 11.
No one's talking directly into the mic yet, so it'll be a few minutes before they start the actual panel. And once they do, I think it'll be fine.
Okay, perfect. And do you know if we're going to be able to record this session?
That is our intention. I think there's a record button on the options, and we're going to turn that on as soon as you guys start.
The session is being recorded.
Perfect.
So we're to like
Up there. Moderation. Hi, Gage, Justin, and Darren. This is Paula.
Paula.
Hi.
So, one quick addition is acknowledging Gage for helping coordinate. She's with FALA. So before we have the panelists introduce themselves. That's it.
Helping.
I just found out because I'm
Introduce ourselves to the Hi everyone, thanks for coming. We'll get started in a few minutes. One last question.
Yes.
We have two microphones. Yes. Yeah, they can see the panelists.
I don't know if you want to try your luck at the other room.
Hi, everyone. First, we'd like to thank Gage from FALA DC for help coordinating the event. Thank you to the panelists for participating in the event, FBANC, SacFALA, FALA DC, and NAPABA.
My name is Alan Sin. I'm a 1L representative with the Filipino American Law Society, co-moderating.
Paula Burnaby, also a 1L rep. So first, we like the panelists to introduce themselves. What's your current role and what type of work do you do?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Sta.Ana. I'm a trial attorney at the U.S. Department of Labor, which means I'm a litigator. I am also the vice president of the Filipino Bar Association of Northern California. And that's me in a nutshell. I don't know exactly if you want me to get into what I do, but perhaps we can wait when the questions kind of unfold. Yes. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rowland. I currently serve as a deputy city attorney with the San Francisco City Attorney's Office. I also serve as a treasurer for the Filipino Bar Association of Northern California.
And Darren, maybe can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, yes, I'm Darren Fernandez. I'm an attorney advisor at the Federal Communications Commission, and I serve as the president-elect of FALA DC.
I'm Justin Delacruz. I am the principal consultant with the California Assembly Committee on Labor and Employment, and I am also the president-elect of SacFALA.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gage Javier, and I'm the president of FALA DC, and I'm also the president of the FALA Foundation. I just wanted to welcome everybody and thank you all for attending this program. It is kicking off actually our affiliate series in conjunction with FBANC and also SacFALA. And we're really looking forward to be able to putting on a series of programming geared towards new attorneys as well as law students and other attorneys within California, Washington, D.C. metro area, and all across the United States. So, thank you very much for joining us. And from there, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to the moderators for this program.
All right. This is a general question, but maybe Mr. Rollan, we could start with you. How did you get to your career now, and what skills did you need to possess in order to do well in your job?
So before I respond to that question, earlier you asked what type of work I do. So the San Francisco City Attorney's Office represents the city and county of San Francisco and all of its employees. I work particularly in the trial team, so we do civil litigation defense for city and county employees. What that means is that my office handles personal injury litigation for any type of negligence claims brought against city workers like muni drivers or hospital workers under the county or police officers. We also do civil rights litigation. So we represent city and county employees when there are allegations of First Amendment violations or excessive force violations, or prisoner rights violations. We represent workers in that regard. How did I get to the city attorney's office? So I clerked. I externed and eventually clerked for a judge at the Northern District, Candace Westmore, that was a city attorney in Oakland for 13 years prior to assuming the bench. When I was externing for her, I was really interested in the kind of cases that she had on her docket, particularly the ones dealing with civil rights. And so I asked her, how can I get to where you're at? She sort of laid a framework like get litigation experience at a law firm that represents public agencies, and then somehow get to a city attorney's office in-house. So I did that. I worked at a law firm for 1 year after law school, doing public agency litigation. And then I started work at the Hayward City Attorney's Office, where I was there for 3 years, and then afterwards ended up at the San Francisco City Attorney's Office. In terms of skills that you need to possess for this job, I would say litigation experience, so motion work, drafting discovery, going to court and doing court appearances, taking depositions, and really good research and writing skills. So.
I will follow Ray's lead to explain what I do at the Solicitor's Office at the U.S. Department of Labor. So the Department of Labor's Solicitor's Office is technically the law firm for the department. We are grouped either in the national office or in regional offices. I work in the regional office here, headquartered in San Francisco, and our region spans all the way from Alaska to Arizona, Idaho, California, obviously, Pacific Northwest, Hawaii, and all the Pacific territories. And so what we do is litigate and bring cases against employers who are exploiting workers. We enforce several statutes the goal is to protect workers. And so that is essentially what I do at the department. Also, I must say that I'm also speaking in my personal capacity about how I got here. So nothing I say here today reflects what the department stands for. In terms of how I got to my position, I've always had a commitment to help workers and migrant workers especially. I went to law school to study both immigration and employment law. I thought that I was actually going to open my own nonprofit after law school, and I did try to. So for the first year after I was barred, I joined something called the Bay Area Legal Incubator Program, which I believe Hastings is also a part of, in conjunction with all the Bay Area law schools, where you do get support and mentorship from practitioners on how to develop an expertise and open up your either own shop or a nonprofit. And I did that for a year, but I encountered someone pretty amazing at an NLG conference, which is the National Lawyers Guild, who was the managing partner at a law firm who is very dedicated to social justice and workers' rights. It's based in Oakland. It's called Levy Vinnick Burrell Hyams, and she wanted to take me under her wing and develop my skills as a litigator to be able to pursue what I ultimately wanted to do, which was to help the Filipino migrant worker community. I worked at that law firm and developed my litigation skills for about 2 years. And then after that, a position opened up at the U.S. Department of Labor. I had interned there during my 2L year and knew that they did exactly the type of work that I wanted to do, but also with the power of the government, right? I didn't realize that, that in itself was something, I thought could be doing the people's work is essentially what the aim is of the department, right? And doing it with government resources was a way for me to do something that I'd wanted to do it in the nonprofit sector, but now I had the government tools to do so. And so I'm currently there. In terms of what kind of skills you want to possess, it's, a commitment to community. I feel like you can learn along the way. And if you have that openness to learn and grow, you can get where you want to get to. I think that coupled with this commitment to serve the public is something that is very valuable in working in the field like mine.
Thank you so much for that. And first, Darren, then Justin, if you same question as well. How did you get your career now, and what skills do you need to possess in order to excel?
All right, so I actually was not in telecommunications when I started my career. I was actually in civil rights. So a lot of my law school experience revolved around civil rights. I was in the general counsel's office at the NAACP. And then right after law school and passing the bar, I was offered a position at the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. I decided to change my career path a little bit because I had a strong passion for communications and technology in general. So, of course, I applied to the FCC and I was offered a position at the general counsel's office. So in the general counsel's office, I was part of their transactions team and fraud team where I would help review broadcast television mergers and as part of the transaction team, and then the fraud team, I would work on key TAM cases under that are filed under the False Claims Act and stuff like that. I decided to jump to the bureau level to get kind of the line attorney work because it's significantly different, right? When you're an OGC, you're looking at a compliance perspective and avoiding litigation risk. When you're at the bureau level, you are more involved in the personal day-to-day interactions with opposing counsel and regulation. So I moved to the media bureau where I was heavily involved in reviewing mergers and acquisitions of broadcast media companies such as Sinclair Tribune and Nexstar Tribune. After a year and a half of that, I decided to dip my hand in the rulemaking process. So I jumped to the Wireline Competition Bureau where I work now on rulemakings under the Universal Service Fund statutory authority. I guess the necessary skills that you need, I guess, in the public sector is a strong commitment to public service, demonstrated interest into public service, and strong research and writing ability, because that's what the agencies really look for. And you know, it's the government, so you're not going to get paid like you do in the private sector. So, like I said, a strong dedication to public service, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Justin. Can you add anything as well?
Sure. So I am the principal consultant with the Assembly Labor and Employment Committee. And so what does that mean? I advise the members of the legislature, specifically on the Assembly side, their staff and the public, on any bill that is going to pass through our committee, which means any bill that affects labor and employment in California. And so that is my big line primary function. Also, during the session, we work with stakeholders or the proponents of bills to make sure their bill goes through the legislative process, make sure that it passes through our committee and passes through each house, address any opposition to that bill, and see if we can help the parties negotiate how to come to a compromise. So in terms of skills, there's some mediation to it. There's a lot of research and writing and a lot of communication skills and actually a lot of like independent judgment. Sometimes you want to share things with people, but you probably shouldn't. And sometimes, you need to share things with people and you need to make that judgment call. In terms of like my career path, it definitely was not as, straightforward. It hasn't been a straight line. I've kind of been following what's interested me intellectually. Out of law school, I worked at a private firm for about 2.5 years, doing just general civil litigation. And then I had the opportunity to clerk for a couple of magistrate judges here in the Eastern District. And I did habeas corpus and Social Security work. That led to kind of an orthodox move to a labor union that represented correctional officers. I felt like moving to that union would give me the opportunity to do a lot of administrative litigation, a lot of opportunities to work on my oral advocacy skills, but also the opportunity to work in prisons, which was something that had interested me since back in college. So I quenched that thirst and then worked at the Department of Transportation for about a year. and then found an opportunity here in the Labor and Employment Committee. And I would say since about 2015, I've kind of really focused my practice towards public sector and labor and employment in the public sector in particular, but now it's expanded back to the private sector. So I really used my litigation skills and kind of my desire to gain litigation skills into leading to this policy work. So it's very new to me, and another thing that I think is important to have is just this desire to learn more and continue learning and explore new areas. So that's all I got here.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Sta.Ana, what does a typical day look like for you?
There is no real typical day, I think, for me, given the fact that me personally, I have cases all over the Western region, and litigation could be in different phases at the time. It's always different. So just for example, let's talk about yesterday, right? I have a wage and hour case that I'm working up where, we had a judgment already against employers who weren't paying workers just wages. The department won a consent judgment on that, but the employers have been in contempt of that. And so I've been working up a case to really, have the judge see that they're still not following the wage and hour laws and haven't paid workers that were owed and found to be owed. But then I went straight to an ERISA case that I'm working on. So ERISA is a statute where it protects employees and their benefits, retirement plans, and whatnot. Essentially, it's wage theft, right? If you see a paycheck, some deductions go to your plans, your retirement, and whatnot. Some employers out there will actually take those wages and not really put them in the plans that they had promised to put them in. So I've been dealing with that, which is actually in Nevada. I have another ERISA case that we're working up in terms of kind of discovery disputes, which is in Hawaii. And so every day it's different, and it all depends on where the litigation is currently at. So that, deals with, meet and confer calls, which means, calls to kind of with opposing counsel to talk about particular disputes. There's a lot of motion practice, and there's oral argument. That is kind of the nature of my work in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Sta.Ana. Also, the same question to you, Mr. Fernandez. Can you provide us a snapshot of what your day looks like?
My day is essentially meetings, and more meetings, and then scrapping for some time to finish agency adjudications and rulemaking, parts of the rulemakings that I'm involved with. That's essentially it. So.
Same question for you as well, Mr. De La Cruz.
So it's cyclical here. The legislative cycle kind of demands or dictates what you do. So we're out of session right now. So now is a little bit of downtime, and you get some opportunities to research bills, come up with bill ideas, come up with, go out in the field and check out what's going on affecting your policy area, network with other people, and really get ready for the session. Follow up on some things that might have been vetoed or some bills that might have been held in other committees. During the session, it's kind of all over the place, but mainly we're preparing for our hearings, analyzing all the new bills that are coming through, meetings also with people who are proponents or opponents of bills. And it can change any day. Like yesterday, one of, our committee, the jurisdictions over AB5, which some of you may be familiar with. Yesterday, Uber Lyft, it's the bill that dictates who is and is not an employee or independent contractor. And so yesterday, Uber Lyft and I think DoorDash filed an initiative to say that all their drivers are independent contractors. So one of my tasks is to analyze that bill or analyze that initiative for some of our members and make sure they're on top and informed.
And Mr. Rollan?
Sure. I'll echo what Jennifer said, and that there's no typical day for a litigator. I'm not as lucky as her because she gets to travel to Hawaii and Nevada and all these cool places. I'm just mostly here in the Bay Area, in Oakland and in San Francisco, in both federal and superior court. Each attorney in our office and the litigation team handles about 25 to 30 cases per attorney, which means that all of those cases are at different points in the litigation, like Jennifer said. My days vary from drafting motions to meeting with clients. Like, there was one time where I had a case involving like a muni bus. The allegation was that the driver did not employ like the doors correctly, and injuring the plaintiff in that case. So I was lucky enough to go to the Muni Yard and actually inspect the bus and see like all these different mechanics that are involved with that process. But we also get to do that in our sheriff's cases and our police cases. Some days I'm at depositions all day for those cases, sometimes court appearances, arguing motions. So each day really varies. I just look, every time I go in, I just look at my case management sheet, which is how I keep track of all of my cases, and see what's like pressing for that day. But it really changes. Pretty exciting, but also sometimes a little crazy. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. Switching gears a little bit to Mr. De La Cruz. I know that you mentioned that you didn't start off with the job that you have now when you finished law school, but we'd like to know when should someone apply for the job that you have, and would you recommend that, if possible, that you start off with the job soon after law school or later on in your career?
So I'm about 8 years in, and I want to say that this job took almost all of those 8 years and every single experience to get. I don't think that's necessarily has to be the case, but that's just how the case was for me. Work in the Capitol and essentially the work that I do can be very difficult to break into. And so a lot of these policy consultant positions where you are working for one of these committees, they really seek, first of all, there's not a lot of these positions out there, and also they don't become available very often. And so when they do, they're very, very competitive. And one of the things they're looking for is kind of an expertise or experience in that policy area. And it's kind of hard to get that expertise or experience in the policy area without having actually worked in the Capitol doing that type of work, or without having practiced. And so when I went into work for the labor union and then continued that work at Caltrans, doing employment litigation, it showed that I had the bona fides for labor and employment. And I don't believe it'd be any different for example, healthcare work or the privacy committee. So I would say, I wish the answer was you can go out and do this right away, because I do think you can actually do the practice and do the practical work of the job. It's just the realities of whether your resume gets picked up out of the pile without having that expertise in that policy area.
Thank you so much. And also, I'd also like to pose the same question to Ms. Sta.Ana. When should someone apply for the job that you have?
What's unique about at least the solicitor's office at the Department of Labor, we have an honors program. An honors program is a 2-year entry-level program that folks out of law school can apply to. It is very selective, but if you do have an opportunity to become an honors attorney, you get a chance to work in the national office, but also the regional offices. So you can see kind of the different types of work the solicitor's office does. Because as I've shared, I litigate, but folks in the national office actually do a lot of policy work and also have an opportunity to write legislation or regulations. And so there's that, but you can also do a lateral move like I did. I worked at a law firm and then I applied. And so there are different ways to get into this practice. There's folks who have been practicing for 12 years who moved to the department. So yeah, it's very much open to folks in different phases of their legal career.
Mr. Rollan, same question as well. Yeah.
Sure. So city attorney's offices typically don't hire new grads from law schools. The only reason being is that, at least on the litigation side, it's very highly independent, and you're really the architect of your own cases. So, for instance, when I get a new case assigned to me by my supervisor, they don't say, this is what I think you should do in the case. Like, I look at the case file, I build a defense plan, and I follow that plan, and consult with my supervisors on different points of the litigation. But mostly, I figure out which individuals are important in the case, which depositions we need to take, what kind of motions we need to write. So in that sense, I think for our office, it's like a range from like 4 to 10 years of practicing that people get into the city attorney's office. I only work at the trial team, and there are over, I think, 17 divisions at the city attorney's office. There's the port office, there's airport, there's code enforcement, affirmative litigation, which you hear about in the news, suing the Trump administration. There's the health and safety team. So there's a lot of different teams that you can be at the office. But I think most of the time, it's like 4 to 10 years is the range of when people start looking. And for our office in particular, most of the hiring is done by networking. So really, if you know someone in the office who can vouch for you, then you can be brought in, for an interview or a referral, and then they'll start the process that way. But yeah, the reason being is that usually new grads don't have the skill set yet to kind of create their own defense plan or to figure out how to interact with the board of supervisors necessarily, which is why they don't hire right away.
Thank you. So, Mr. Fernandez, along personal motivations, why did you choose this type of career, and what fulfillment does it provide for you?
The career in public service?
Yes.
Well, I chose a career in public service mostly because, it's my way of serving. I wasn't allowed due to injury to serve in the armed forces, so this is my way. And that's kind of my motivation. Because I'm very patriotic, and I love this country, and I want to do everything I can to serve it.
Thank you. And Mr. De La Cruz, what was the personal motivation for you to choose this career?
So I come from a line of public servants. I have parents that work for the state of California. My sister, brother-in-law, everybody's working for the state of California. And I even worked for the state of California as a non-lawyer while I was going to law school, just as a budget analyst. So that's always been instilled with me. I wanted to see what the private sector had out there for me because I didn't really have kind of someone to show me the ropes. My career kind of followed one of my friends from law school. He solicited for law review, so did I. He got on, he became the chief comment editor, so did I. He worked at this firm and got a Sunrise associate position, so did I. And I didn't really have anyone else guiding me. So I just kind of followed along those lines until it came to a point where I was like, okay, well, I gotta figure out what I want for my own. But I always knew I would come back to public service sometime. And in my particular position, as a policy analyst or a policy consultant, I'm really interested and motivated by the fact that whatever I do or whatever I suggest is going to affect a lot of people, and I'd like to think a lot of people for the good. And so that's a great motivation for me. Also, another great thing or perk of this job is that you get to work with some of these smart people who are like on the cutting edge of their respective industries. And so that's another motivation for me. But overall, I mean, kind of like what Darren said, I've got a push for public service, and I think that's something that's kind of necessary to do this type of work and do work for the government.
So for someone who is personally motivated or passionate in pursuing community service as career, you might be discouraged from doing so because there's this notion that public service salary won't sustain a living, especially considering student debts and the cost of housing. So posing in general, this question to our panelists. Would you say it's feasible to live in your area with your salary? And if you're comfortable sharing, could you provide a salary range?
Yeah, this is Darren. There's the salary range. You can Google it, opm.gov for the federal government, and look at the various GS scales for the various regions that they divide the GS scales into. Yes, it is sustainable to have a life, enjoy life, and work in the public sector. Then again, that's it's very up to the individual. And one of the biggest perks, I guess, right now, and hopefully it's still available, is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which is a huge incentive to stay in the public sector for at least 10 years because your debt gets wiped free after 10 years tax-free. So yes, it's very sustainable. You can do it, and you'll always find a way. If you really have a passion for working in the federal government, at least for the federal government, because that's all I know, you'll find a way regardless of the salary to do what you want and enjoy life.
Just to piggyback off of that, since I also work in the federal government. So if you are thinking about working here in the Bay Area, so the pay locality here is one of the highest in the country because it's very expensive here. So if you're an entry-level attorney or an honors attorney, you start at the GS11 scale, which is 75,515. The second year, you go up to a GS12, which is 90,512. Don't quote me on this. This is what I know personally, okay? But after you've done the honors program, or if you move laterally with like the same type of entry-level experience, you go up to a GS13 and you start at 107,630. If you have 3 or more years of practice, you can become a GS14 and get up to 127,187 here in the Bay Area. So those are starting. That's where you would start, and it increases a bit. And then a GS15 is the highest pay scale, and those are competitive. And I did not add that to my list here, given the fact that you're mostly law students. It takes a while to get to a GS15.
So, what advice would you give law students, and how could we get involved in the type of work that you do through internships and externships?
Oh, me?
Sorry,
Okay, I guess.
Mr.
Go
Rollan.
ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
Okay, I'll just answer. So the San Francisco City Attorney's Office does not offer an honors program, but we do offer summer, spring, and fall internships. If you're interested, come talk to me after. I have cards. I know the person that you can connect with there. I'm happy to meet over coffee with you if this is something that you're interested in. In terms of advice, figure out first, so if your goal is to work at the San Francisco City Attorney's Office, figure out what division you want to work for, because not all of us litigate. Some of us do advisory work. So again, advising Board of Supervisors or advising the fire department or the port or airport on regulations, so more like compliance work. Figure out if you want to do advisory or litigation, and then develop the skills that an attorney in that position would need. Another additional piece of advice is identify someone that works in my office, ask them to connect you with someone who's an attorney in another team that you want to meet with. That's really the best way to figure out like the connections that you need to make in order to meet someone in another division that maybe doesn't speak on panels like this, and then ask them about their career path. Everyone in our office is really nice, and I'm sure everyone will be willing to meet with you over coffee or lunch or something like that. And then they'll identify kind of the key skills that you need to develop in order to be in their position, right? So work at a law firm doing advisory work, and then, or in my case, work at a litigation law firm, and then maybe work for a smaller agency and then move over to San Francisco. But that would be my advice.
Do we have any, we'd like to at this time open up for questions from the audience?
Sure. And thanks for asking. Actually, because city attorney's offices don't necessarily hire right away, the pay that I've noticed for cities and counties are normally higher than even the state or federal salaries. I would say like the starting salary for someone hired at my office would range from like 130,000 and can go up to like over 200,000, right? So definitely livable in the Bay Area by our standards, but it just depends how much years of experience you have, what level they'll place you. But everything is also online on transparentcalifornia.com. Also, if you go to the city and county website of any city, they're required to post like the salary schedules of every position in that city, including attorneys. So, like for instance, if you want to work in Oakland or in Hayward, that information will be available to you based on the city's website, and then you can see everyone's salary ranges and schedules and the steps and all these things are all public. Yeah.
I'd like to add something actually with regards to the honors program. Lucky for you guys, I used to be involved in the hiring process for the honors attorneys at the FCC. If you want to work for the FCC, and I'm only speaking for the FCC because that's what I know, is that I highly recommend that you intern for the FCC and make connections, because as it's been said in this panel before, it's all about the connections. So if you're really interested in the honors program, or feel free to contact me and let's get you set up with an internship out here in DC at headquarters and hopefully get you a job.
To add to that about the honors program, you want to take a look at the Justice Department's honors program website. It's important to know when the honors program actually kicks into place. You're looking at maybe between July until September for when the applications are actually open. And this can potentially change depending on which agency that you want to apply to. So if you're interested in looking at the entry-level positions through the honors program, go to the agency, look to see what their schedule is like, and apply as soon as possible, because the turnaround is fairly quickly. So for example, with the Department of Justice, their applications close in early September, and then by late September, they're already identifying the interview candidates. So so if you're looking at when you want to time a lot of these interviews and applications process, by the time you're looking at your maybe end of spring semester of your second year, for example, you want to already start looking into when in the summer and also in the fall of your 3L year you actually want to start applying to at the same time. Now, in terms of considerations, and the reason why I also know some of this information as well is because we've been in touch with a few different recruiters, and also people who are through USA Jobs, who've been through OPM, in that when you are trying to apply for a lot of these government positions, particularly if it's the honors program or particularly if it's any kind of other government entities, you want to queue yourself up within your resume as a law student already, so that you have as much of the electives as possible that is going to be within the area that you want to practice. So if you know that you're doing immigration law, you're interested in doing immigration law, try and work on an immigration clinic. If you're interested in doing more prosecutorial work, anything that has anything to do with criminal law, you want to get involved in that. Be involved with moot court. Moot court over mock trial is generally favored more positively because of the advocacy skills that you're going to be learning through that, and then also being involved in the law journal. So if you haven't been in law journal right now, try and write in, even if it's your second year, see if you can actually get on there. And if you're not able to get into your actual law school main law journal, try and see if there's a secondary one, whether or not it's international law or business law or any other kind of journal that you can potentially be involved in, so that you can actually have that in your resume, because that's extremely valuable whether or not you're working for government or whether or not you're working for a law firm. They're looking for a couple of things. They want moot court, they want law journal, and they also want good grades. So you want to be able to work on and focus on all of those things at the same time. Another opportunity other than the honors program I'd also encourage other people to take a look at the Presidential Management Fellows Program. Now, this is a program where individuals who are interested in working for the government can also apply. It has a window in early October to be able to submit your applications, and it's essentially a process where you can take part, you can actually have a job in the government, and then you're going through, similar to an honors program, a rotation in different departments. And when you're done with that program, you actually get to select which program or which agency you'd like to work for, and then you can leverage your relationships and your interests from that point on. So take a look at that. Take a look at the honors program, the PMF. Also take a look at Oscar, because a lot of folks who end up going into clerkships, for example, whether or not that's the state and federal level, gradually build up, and they're also more valuable when you go into work in terms of the government. More specifically, if anybody who's interested in working for the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, I would highly recommend between your first and second year to do a summer internship, and then between your second and third year, do a law clerkship with the San Francisco DA's office. When you do that, they do offer permanent positions after you apply as a law clerk, and you've actually spent time there as a law clerk between your second and third year. And then afterwards, you can start as soon as you graduate in the district attorney's office.
I'd like to caution, though, that if you want to be an attorney in the federal government, is that with the, at least for the PMF, the Presidential Management Fellows, that if you're not classified as a what they call a 905 series, it's very hard to transition into a 905 series if you're in the government working as a different series. So just be cautious about that. It's not impossible, but just be cautious if you're dead set on being classified as an attorney advisor or an attorney in the federal government.
Yeah, check out the different honors programs in all of the different agencies. So I didn't even know that the FCC had an honors program, right? And so DOJ is known to have one, DOL, NLRB. There's some years where they do and some years where they won't. So just check every year and on their website whether or not they offer the honors program that year.
So the phrase dedication to public service is sort of thrown out a lot in this field. And so I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what exactly does that look like, and how do you demonstrate that on, say, a cover letter or during an interview or on a resume?
I can start. In terms of a demonstration to public service, I mean, I was very, very focused in law school and what I wanted to do, you know, helping the migrant worker community. And so I definitely volunteered in a lot of clinics, and I really tried to showcase the fact that I was only going to kind of do this kind of work. It's not true for everyone, but for me, it was something that just clearly showed, because my passion showed in every single action that I took in law school, right? From the classes that I took, for what I did during my summers, and, you know, and the networks that I tried to build, right? Like, I am somebody who still actively seeks for mentors, right? And so when I found out that Bill Tamayo existed, who's the district director of the EEOC, I went after to really get to know him. And, you know, to this day, he guides me in my legal career. And so I think if, you know, you are, and you don't have to know yet what you want to do, but if you are trying to really learn and actively seek these opportunities to intern or to take these kinds of classes, or to seek out people who you want to become, I think that would show in your resume.
As for me, so I was working at the Hayward City Attorney's Office prior to the SF City Attorneys. It was a smaller team. There were 7 lawyers. All of us did advisory and transactional work. I handled the housing division there. So when you talk about public service and like direct impact, we would go to city council meetings where people would be clamoring and complaining about affordable housing and the high rates of housing and how people are being displaced because of high housing costs. So we worked as an attorney in my office, we worked with staff in the city manager's office to figure out solutions as to how to draft legislation and ordinance that would impact those people, right? So do we want to increase like our affordability rates, or like do we want to impose more restrictions on developers so that they're required to build more affordable housing? Those are the kinds of things that you would deal with if you worked at a county or the city level. At the city attorney's office, you know, public service comes in the form of representing my clients zealously. And these people are like well-intentioned city workers that have dedicated their lives driving the Muni for 25 years, and then they get into an accident and they're shook, right? They're like literally shaking in my office crying because this is the first time they've ever done something that harmed somebody. And it's my job to let them know, like, this is totally fine, and this happens all the time, and it's no one's fault. It just was an accident, and we're going to try to resolve this to figure out so that you can move on with your life without worry, right? So that's the kind of impact on an individual level that we have litigating these kinds of cases, and making sure that, you know, we don't allow frivolous claims against our employees.
Gage, do you have any questions for our panelists?
Is there anything that you would recommend people can turn to in terms of like other resources, or how would you encourage them, specifically, for example, how would you encourage them on how to reach out to people? You know, what are some initial maybe opening statements or things you would recommend shooting them an email on how to break the ice? Because a lot of students oftentimes, or even young attorneys or newer attorneys, are really not sure, once they've identified somebody to reach out to, how to have that initial conversation.
Honestly, for me, it's just finding a way to run into them. That's the best way. And if you really want to communicate through email, if you're more comfortable that way, just say, hey, I'm someone on your title line. Hey, I'm someone looking for mentorship. But the best way is to actually run into them in person and establish a personal relationship or connection, or find somebody who can introduce you to them, who you're comfortable with. And it may take several layers of networking to get there, but you'll get there. That's the biggest advice I can give you, and that's kind of what I've been doing, or what I did when I was looking for my various positions.
And, you know, don't be intimidated. One of my mentors told me, like, we're all people. And, you know, there was one day, you know, where that person that you're looking up to, you know, a couple years ago, they were you, right? Also trying to seek mentorship. And just like a personal anecdote of mine, when I found out my first year of law school that the Chief Justice was Filipina, I kind of stalked her. I'm like, where is she going to be? And I found out, I was actually lucky enough to be invited to this California court event because I had won a mock or a moot court competition at my school. So I got invited to that, and she was going to be like the keynote speaker. And I was not, yes, I was intimidated, but I also did not let that kind of overcome me, right? I went up to her during a break session, and I told her, hey, I am part of the Filipino American Law Society at my law school, and I know that me, along with my fellow students, would love to meet you. And so she invited us to meet her at her chambers, and from then on, I just kind of had this kind of relationship with her, and I eventually, my 3L year, was able to work for her. And so don't be intimidated, right? If you see somebody that you really look up to, try to make that connection, right? Because a long time ago, the chief was, you know, a law student as well, and looking to find a way to kind of succeed in this career. And so, yeah.
I'll add to that. If you're not as brave as as Jennifer, I think primarily identifying a mentor that you resonate with, right? Like a lawyer who may not be practicing the area of law that you eventually want to end up with, but would really support you in whatever you're doing. I am 100% sure that they know someone in their network that they can connect you with for that person to meet you at a later time over coffee. So for me, it's like sometimes it could be strenuous to like force a connection with someone that you look up to, and then like, I don't know, being awkward and like you're, oh no, all my chances are ruined, right? So identify someone first that you really connect with, and then I'm sure that they can use their networks, and they would be happy to do that, to connect you with someone that you want to eventually connect with. If you're not as, you know, bold to go up to the Chief Justice at an event. So.
I want to add that, and this kind of ties into some other questions, answers to some questions about being intentional about your volunteer work, and that, yes, we all should be doing volunteer work. That's kind of my thought. And you'll meet a lot of people doing that work who are similarly interested, who will naturally introduce you to other people who may or may not be in certain positions, who will introduce you to other people. So when you go out and do your work out in the community, you know, be a leader, do really good work, show up. Because I feel like a lot of how I've gotten to where I am was through really good networking, showing up, making sure that I kept in touch with people. If to go a little bit further, if you connect with somebody that you really have wanted to connect with, and they're kind of like, oh, well, I may not be the person, but this other person may be the person you're looking for, make sure you follow up with that person because they may be asking about it. If they make suggestions about, oh, maybe you should be involved with this particular organization or not, follow up on it. Make sure that, you know, when you reach out, that if they give you a suggestion, you're the type to follow up. And I think that'll help grow your reputation.
All right, unless there are any more questions from our audience, or if our panelists would like to add anything else,
Actually, just one more.
Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry, just one more these are for newer attorneys who are already practicing, who are interested in going from either private practice or nonprofit work into government. Are there any suggested tactics or any advice you would give them so that they can make that transition more smoothly?
Yes, learn the USA jobs process. And when I say that is to learn how to really work the HR process, because the people who review your resume and what you submit on USA jobs literally have a book and they have a checklist. And if you hit a certain amount of words, they're going to pass you on. And that's, if you want more help on that, just feel free to contact me.
I just wanted to give a plug on Corrine from the Career Services Office, the Development Office. One good way to get some summer experience working for a federal, state, or local agency is during your first year summer, if any of you are one else, is to don't forget to go through the public interest, public sector career fair day process. Oh,
nobody can hear. Just don't forget the Hastings event that other schools also attend does happen here. Public interest, public sector career fair day. This year it's February 1st. We place so many people through that career fair into agencies at all three levels of government. And it's a great way to get that experience, to show that interest and dedication to public service, and to also sort out whether this kind of career is one that you do want to pursue. So don't forget, we're here in the career office. Daryl Alfort is here, Corinne Kelleher. We can help you get there. We also have a program that I run, the Alumni Mentor Program. We have a list of people that are Hastings alums that have already expressed interest in being mentors to our students. So if you want to be able to, on a very low risk level, meet up with a government lawyer and have an informational networking meeting, get that networking process started, we can help you get there in a very low risk way. We can give you a script on how to reach out in an email. We can give you a handout giving you ideas for how to run that informational meeting, that networking approach. And truly, in my own personal legal experience, exactly what these other practitioners are telling you is true. You've got to get out there and start talking to people and get some work experience. So Public Interest Public Sector Day is February 1st. There's a whole process. So start listening to all our announcements about that. And don't hesitate to come and meet with one of us about how to help you get started with this important networking, including the amazing professionals that are here today. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank our panelists for being here today, calling in from DC and Sacramento, and also to our co-sponsors, the Filipino Bar Association of Northern California, the Sacramento Filipino American Lawyers Association, the Filipino American Lawyers Association of Washington, DC, and the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out.
It's really a big loss.
I didn't know until yesterday.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gage, and thank you, Darren.
Actually, I know.
Not
Thank
a
you.
problem.
Thanks for having us.
Does everyone have my contact, or in case anyone wants to contact me?
I can give them the point of contact. Just let me know which information you want me to forward them, and I'll send it over.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll send it to you now.
Okay, thanks.
It's such a huge loss.
Thank you for being here today.
So I didn't.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We know that we'll continue with so many students are so excited about what you're doing next.
Yeah, it's a good office.
Thank you for coming again.
Yeah, of course. I think I saw you at another event there recently.
I was moderating.
Okay, yeah.
I know. I'm just like
I'm gonna
always
get rid of your
here.
card, then your PA students
Sure.
and stuff, because I'm not sure like what department.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
Just send me an email. I've had coffee with like a bunch of Anson students.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I had a
Oh,
Sunday.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought like you said, lighting. Someday I wanted to get there. Doing a lot of work.
And then start now, right? Like start meeting people there now that will like keep track of you. And then once there's an opening, it's like, we'll let you know.
I'm the older student, so I've done like the
Sure.
some experience.
Yeah.
To develop the skills here in Las Vegas.
Sure. Yeah.
Just take a quick
Here's my card.
Virginia, I think.
Yeah, Virginia.
Where's Neil?
Yeah.
Neil has a fancy camera. Yeah.
And it's also
Just because people have to go, right? You take the photo or ask someone to, so you can be in it.
Thank you for coming. Bye. I love you.
so can you only apply through IPS or
No, you can also go to the summer internship website.
I know.
It's pretty
I
clear
gotta go
there,
too.
like the requirements, like cover letter and everything. So, but if you want to get coffee to review that and what that looks like,
seriously?
happy to do that.
Let's just take a quick photo since people have to go.
All
All
right.
right, Neil, everyone. Okay, good. Thank you so much. I know. Great job, by the way.
Hello.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like limiting to not be involved in
I do, but I want to say, oh yeah, I think your mic got out of sync with the Wi-Fi because like when I got it to work as soon as I took it out of the room, I think you might have pressed the button on it a couple times while you were just standing there, and somehow it was flashing because it wasn't on the channel anymore. I appreciate that. No problem. It came right back as soon as I took it out. And I could have just pressed the button.
I appreciate I'm happy to be there.
I think you're pressing the buttons.
Our office is just right on Market Street. So
It was always like kind of like you said, just there, and so it's kind of
Yeah, I really, the lawyers I work with they are, but it's pretty clearly outlined with when the deadline is on, all the provisions and that I think when you apply, they'll respond confirming the execution and then they'll ask you of course, the summer jobs are the most competitive. It's also, they have a whole program for the summer courses. Like they have, leaves, there's all of these different I'm not quite sure they do that in this fall. An internship at our office is really just so whether you're in summer yeah, for the summer.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, and are those open now?
So for the spring, I think it's over. For the summer, the deadline is December.
Okay.
So you can still apply if you want to over.
Okay. And then the requirements are on the link, but are there anything specific that was when I was
I would say for a couple of tasks, like when you're first when yours work, that you just
Great, thank you so much.
Stand on the escalator in front of me.
As long as I have one other person to bring this to the other building, or can you give this back to the law office?
Do you guys know anyone who wants the last copy of the Jack and Dodge I don't know, it's been sitting in the room here on the shelf for months, but it's like Jeff Adachi's final. You taking the bar yet?
Two strong men. Don't do it yourself. Check. I have her email. If you want to email me, and then I'll email it to you.
So I don't know exactly how to get that tape, but contact our department, we can wherever it lives, it might be on our Panopto, I don't know.
Yeah. It seems like that's what
Yeah, I think
you all are using.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Zoom itself exists as Zoom, so I think
Yeah.
they were just recording it separately as a
Yeah.
Panopto stream. which is
Yeah,
what we
for
do
like through
for
the.
most of the systems in here. So in that case, you might get all the talking heads would be on the ones with Panopto. You sometimes get like both screens. You pick and choose your own adventure. You can put them in a small window or a big window or whatever. You basically get two videos in one. So whereas the Zoom would have been, I don't know, I think she'll have it all saved as a Panopto file. Download that maybe and put it on your own website or just link to the Panopto page. You want it to post it somewhere. And I just, there was just that one guy who was shoveling, like, there would have been 5 of you just sitting there, but he was literally holding the plate like this, and my camera angle was like, I was like, oh my God. And Laura calls me, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to get away from this guy, because he's just leave him. I'm like, no, I can't. I just can't even look at it. Yeah. Put the plate on the table, man. Are you listening to this thing? You just came for the food. I know you.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for making it happen.
Yeah, thank you
It definitely would not, like,
could always be more perfect, but you know. Next time I'm gonna move the table so it's not so like there's no chance of that happening again. Only like, ooh,
Or just like not have a chair.
almost no one ever sits here because it's
Yeah.
like you're facing this way, so you would never sit here for an event. We should have taken the chair away.
I think next time maybe just not have a chair there.
It was honestly so good though.
It was good, yeah.
Thank you so much.
And it didn't even seem that delayed.
The first guy was starting to talk, and a student, like who wasn't here when we were testing everything, he sits down and he holds his plate up, and he's eating from his plate like in front of the guy's face. I'm like, oh my God, there's like no other shot I can go to. I'm just like, so I tried to go over his head, and I just zoomed in really tight on the guy talking. It's so tight. I was like, oh no, there's just got that kid sitting.
Yeah. This is a